Washington, I'm still reporting on the economy. This is the first of many coming addresses to the nation, specifically to the Libertarian Nation. Tonight, I will clear up some common misperceptions of my positions. Before we get into that, I'd like to thank the Daily Bell at thedailybell.com for their excellent write-up on my groundbreaking run for the Libertarian nomination for president, and urge all libertarians to take a look at this address. Secondly, I got a complaint this week from a libertarian saying that they would never vote for someone who read from a teleprompter. Well, I'm reading from a teleprompter right now, and everything you see from me in the future will be reading from a teleprompter. If you want the world's best public speaker, go hire an actor. If you want someone who has given his life to studying the most important issue facing humanity today, hire me. Besides, I value your time. I write these addresses carefully to get the most information across in the shortest time. That's why people find my addresses so packed with information. I am only being respectful of your time and attention. Now let's go to the top 11 issues as I see them today. Number 1, deconsolidation of power. I've said it before and now I'll say it again. Everything that I do will be along the lines of deconsolidating power at every level of governance, but especially the international level. That means no more money for the United Nations and no more support. On Monday, January 21st, 2013, the eviction process of the United Nations from New York City will begin. Number 2, monetary reform. I've heard some complaints that I want to consolidate the money power into the hands of Congress instead of letting the so-called free market make its choices. This is just wrong in several ways. First of all, the so-called free market has been completely in charge of the quantity of American money since the repeal of the Glass-Steagall Act in 1999, 12 years ago. So how's that free market thing been working out for us? Not so well. So much money has been created since then by the private commercial banks that the Federal Reserve System started hiding the figures in March of 2006. So the problem is that now the greatest power of any sovereign nation, the money power, is completely out of the hands of we the people. So the problem is that now the greatest power of any sovereign nation, the money power, is completely out of the hands of we the people. This is what humankind's 1,000-year struggle to escape serfdom has been all about, wresting control of national money from the money changers, the very ones that Jesus chased out of the temple in Jerusalem 2,000 years ago. In just the last 100 years, we have given it all back now. We have completely lost control over the quantity of our national money, and nothing but an ironclad world dictatorship can come from this. Job number 1 in restoring American freedom is taking back the money power into the hands of we the people. Nothing else, no other issue is anywhere near as important as monetary reform in the coming election. In the past, I've been very careful in how I have explained where the money power should go once we take it away from the banks. But some people continue to attempt to distort my position by saying that I want all that power in the hands of Congress. Nothing could be farther from the truth. The money power must be returned into the hands of we the people. That means Congress to some degree. But for the most part, I want the money power deconsolidated even further into the hands of the individual states. I'll be open to any plan that effectively did this. But for the time being, I've pushed a plan that splits the money power in twain. Congress sets inflation targets, that's it. Then a separate body, a monetary authority, would be composed of members appointed by the state legislatures. This body, the monetary authority, will have all the levers of power which the Fed has now but does not use to control the quantity of money in our system. Its creation will also tend to reverse the effects of the 17th Amendment, which took power from the states by stripping the state legislatures of their constitutionally mandated role of appointing their senators to the U.S. Congress. Once the states safely have the money power, what a wonderfully different economic world we will be living in. Yes, states will fight over how much money should be in the system. That's good. We need that friction to keep us free. See, that's the genius of the American political system. It spreads power out to the maximum extent practical. It's a concept that underlies the entire framework of the U.S. Constitution, yet is nowhere mentioned in the document. It's called the separation of powers concept, where everyone shares power in a smooth flow from top to bottom. It makes our governing very slow, but very, very safe. The problem with the federal government is that gradually over the years, the power pyramid has been steepened in favor of the over-centralization of power. But even more importantly is that the biggest of all the powers, the money power, has been completely taken out of the governmental system altogether. The money power, the power to create our U.S. money, is no longer in the hands of the government. It is completely in the hands of the biggest banks. When was the last time you could elect a banker? This is a complete and total disruption of the very framework of our constitutional republic, and it is by far the first thing that any politician running for office at the federal level should be addressing. Sadly, I am the only one doing so. Dr. Paul is a distant second, but he focuses on ending the Fed. I've said this a million times, and I'll say it a million more times before I die. If you end the Federal Reserve tomorrow, and that's all you did, nothing would change. It's not the Fed. The problem is we have given the big banks the ability to counterfeit American money. They pick the financial winners and the losers according to what enriches them the most. And they pick the political winners and losers according to who will protect them in the United States Congress. That's just a simple fact of life, and it must be changed. The Fed is just there to fake us out into thinking that someone is watching out for our interests, that someone is controlling the banks. It's not happening. Nothing could be farther from the truth. We, the people, in some form or another, have to take back the money power. But the worst thing Dr. Paul does is to completely mischaracterize the contents of Article 1, Section 10, when he says that the Constitution says that only gold and silver can be legal tender. He does this to justify his old return to gold money mantra. It's not only wrong, but it's so wrong that it makes me wonder why he would do that. Read it for yourselves. Number 3, border security. What keeps the world free? It's certainly not any transnational organizations like the United Nations. It's the independent and sovereign nation state, operating in the interests of its citizenry. Imperative to state sovereignty is the notion of defensible borders. One of the planks of the Libertarian National Party is basically open borders. I think this stems from the old anarchy branch of the Libertarian Party. How can you call yourselves a political party and subscribe to any form of anarchy? I just don't get it. Jeffersonian minimalist governance, okay, I can understand that and agree with it. Open borders is a one-way ticket to the destruction of nation states, and that in turn is a one-way ticket to the New World Order from which humanity's yearning to breathe free will be crushed, never to rise again. I say, build a fence, seal the borders, then we'll figure out what to do with the existing illegals in this country. Number 4, fixing the trade imbalance. We certainly need to fix our trade imbalance and revive our ability to be self-sufficient, at least in matters involving national security. Unfortunately, we are far from that and heading south at a frightening pace. This must be fixed, and fixed on a national emergency basis. I'm moving in the direction of tariffs, but I'm still open to other ideas. We cannot allow our economy to bleed tens of billions of dollars per month because we are buying things we don't need with money we don't have. One way or another, I will fix this, and that probably means canceling all our foreign trade treaties, like withdrawing from the World Trade Organization. Number 5, the elimination of the income tax as we know it today. The American income tax system is so complex that it takes an army of lawyers to understand it. Of course, this favors those who can pay an army of lawyers. This is completely intolerable to the cause of freedom and must go away to be replaced with some sort of consumption tax, with exceptions for the poor, the elderly, and the disabled. This is relatively easy to do and will drastically reduce the average person's fear of government. The war on drugs. The reduction of our prison population by the elimination of many recreational drug laws is key to reducing prison expenditures. The so-called war on drugs is a complete failure. It does not prevent drug use, but it does fill our jails, ruin millions of lives, and most importantly, jack up the price so that it creates a permanent multi-billion-dollar guaranteed market to the narcos in Mexico. This is entirely unnecessary and completely destructive to the overall cause of liberty. Prosecute Wall Street inside traders. Those who are stealing the most money should become the highest priority targets for prosecution. Send all that drug war money over to beefing up enforcement in the SEC, Security and Exchange Commission. Bring on experienced bank fraud prosecutors like Professor Bill Black of the University of Missouri, who has successfully prosecuted bank fraudsters over the years, and turn him loose. Number 8, take the money out of politics. It's obvious to everyone at this point that government has been taken over by banksters. Within 30 days of taking office, I will recommend sweeping election reforms to Congress and demand swift passage. And I will address the nation on the progress of that legislation weekly until it is enacted. Number 9, make the U.S. energy independent. Oil is too valuable to burn for electrical generation. Carl Denninger has done some remarkable work unearthing an earlier form of nuclear power generation that is much safer and much cheaper than our current uranium fuel rod technology. It's called the Fischer-Tropsch thorium reactor technology, after the two Germans who perfected it in, catch this, World War II. Thorium is far more plentiful than uranium and can even be extracted from coal. In fact, there is about 13 times as much energy in the thorium in coal than can be generated from burning the coal itself. Welfare reform. Under monetary reform, we can quickly return to national prosperity, and as the world's richest nation, can afford to protect those who cannot work from falling through a Deconsolidation hole in the safety net. Therefore, I cannot support its complete elimination, but I do support huge cuts so that only the truly needy are supported. The libertarian position is that private charities can and should take over. There is merit in this idea, but it will take some time to get Americans used to the idea once again of supporting such charities. However, the most important consideration in welfare reform is that we have to return to an incentive-driven society. 2 generations of Americans have grown up with an entitlement mentality. This cannot be allowed to continue if we are to continue to be a nation where you can succeed by your hard work. I probably will not have specific recommendations in this area or the area of healthcare reform and Social Security reform for several months. But when I do, these reforms will be guided by this return to an incentive-driven nation. Number 11, reduce government spending. It goes without saying that the size of the federal government must be reduced. Entire agencies must be eliminated. wars will come to an end. Yet vigilance is necessary, as the freedom humanity yearns for is nowhere better represented than here in America, and so that will always come under attack by those who will always seek to re-enslave humankind. But until we retake the money power back into the hands of we the people, thinking some combination of government expenditure cutting and tax raising will fix this problem is nothing but a utopian nightmare. It will never work. By 2020, just the interest we pay on our national debt will exceed a staggering $1 trillion a year. This is entirely unnecessary. This is the first place we should cut. I'm still reporting from Washington. Good evening.